Beautiful woman insults Sandra Bullock in first-class lounge. Keanu Reeves' reaction shocks everyone. The hum of quiet conversations and the clinking of glasses filled the exclusive first-class lounge at LAX. Sandra Bullock sat near the window, her fingers lightly scrolling through her phone as she waited for her flight to London. Across from her, Keanu Reeves sipped a black coffee, effortlessly exuding the quiet coolness he was known for. The peace was shattered when a stunning woman, high cheekbones, designer heels and an attitude to match, strode up to the bar. She barely spared Sandra a glance before tossing her expensive coat onto the seat beside her. "Oh wow," the woman suddenly scoffed, eyeing Sandra up and down. "I didn't expect to see someone like you here." Sandra raised an eyebrow, her signature smirk forming. "Excuse me?" "You know," the woman continued with a practiced flick of her hair. "I thought first-class lounges were for real A-listers, but I guess they let anyone in these days." Her voice dripped with condescension, her manicured fingers curling around a crystal glass of champagne. The room grew silent. A few guests turned their heads, watching the scene unfold. Keanu, who had been observing quietly, slowly set his coffee down. He adjusted his black leather jacket, stretched his fingers over the table, and leaned forward slightly. "That's funny," he said in his smooth, measured tone, "because I was just thinking the same thing about you." The woman blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" Keanu's expression remained calm, but his words carried weight. "See, I've worked with Sandra for years. She's talented, kind, and one of the most respected people in this industry. You, on the other hand, just walked in here and made yourself look very small." A hushed murmur swept through the lounge. Sandra, clearly entertained, bit her lip to suppress a laugh. The woman's face turned red. She stammered, but before she could finish, Keanu stood up, motioning toward Sandra. "Come on, Sandy," he said with a slight grin. "Let's sit somewhere with a better view." With effortless cool, he led her toward a quieter corner of the lounge. As they walked away, Sandra whispered, "You really know how to make an exit." Keanu shrugged. "What can I say? I don't like rude people." The woman stood frozen, her arrogance deflated. Around her, the other passengers exchanged knowing glances before returning to their drinks, their respect for Keanu Reeves growing even stronger. And just like that, the legend of Keanu Reeves, defender of Sandra Bullock, was born. As Keanu and Sandra settled into a quieter corner of the lounge, she let out a small chuckle. "You really didn't have to do that, you know," she said, taking a sip of her sparkling water. Keanu smirked. "I know, but it was fun." Sandra shook her head, amused. "I swear, you're like some kind of Hollywood superhero, always so calm, always saying the perfect thing at the perfect time." Keanu shrugged, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I just don't like seeing good people disrespected, and besides—" He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Did you see her face? That was worth it." Sandra burst out laughing, causing a few heads to turn. But she didn't care. She and Keanu had been friends for decades, and moments like this reminded her why. As the minutes passed, they fell into easy conversation, reminiscing about their early days filming Speed, the weird fan encounters over the years, and the times they had almost, but never quite, worked together again. Then, as if the universe had a sense of humor, the lounge attendant approached their table. "Mr. Reeves, Ms. Bullock, your flight to London has been delayed by 2 hours, she announced apologetically. Sandra groaned. "Great, just what we needed." Keanu, ever the optimist, simply leaned back in his chair. "Guess that means more time for bad airport coffee and deep conversations." Sandra gave him a side eye. "You call this bad? I've had worse. Remember that diner in Texas at 3 a.m. after that awards show?" Keanu winced. "Okay, fair point." Just then, the same arrogant woman from earlier passed by their table, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She hesitated, clearly aware of the stares still following her, and shot them both an awkward glance before quickly looking away. Sandra smirked. "Think she learned her lesson?" Keanu shrugged. "I hope so, but if not—" He picked up his coffee and took a slow sip. "The universe has a funny way of humbling people." Sandra grinned, raising her glass. "To karma, then." Keanu clinked his coffee cup against hers. "To karma." And with that, they settled in, two old friends enjoying each other's company, proving once again that class wasn't about where you sat. It was about how you carried yourself. As the hours stretched on, the first-class lounge slowly emptied out. But Keanu and Sandra remained lost in conversation. They talked about everything: life, love, the strange fleeting nature of fame. "You ever think about disappearing?" Sandra mused, swirling the ice in her glass. Keanu smirked. "I do disappear. I ride the subway, eat at hole-in-the-wall diners, and no one notices." Sandra laughed. "Of course you do. You're like an urban legend. I swear, half the internet thinks you just randomly appear to save puppies and help old ladies cross the street." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Not all the time." Their moment was interrupted by a nervous voice clearing behind them. Excuse me?" They turned to see the beautiful woman from earlier, now looking noticeably less confident. She hesitated before speaking. I just wanted to apologize," she said, shifting awkwardly. "I shouldn't have been rude. That was uncalled for." Sandra raised an eyebrow, exchanging a quick glance with Keanu. "That's big of you," Sandra said, her tone neutral but kind. The woman swallowed. I assumed things, and I was wrong." She exhaled, "actually really cool." Sandra smirked. "I know." Keanu let out a soft chuckle. The woman turned to Keanu. "And you totally humiliated me." Keanu tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "But," she continued, "I guess I needed it." "So, thanks." Keanu simply nodded. No hard feelings. She let out a breath of relief, gave them an awkward wave, and quickly retreated to the far side of the lounge. Sandra waited until she was out of earshot before leaning toward Keanu. "That was unexpected." Keanu smirked. "Told you. The universe has a funny way of humbling people." Sandra shook her head, laughing softly. "You're like some kind of Zen master," he shrugged. "Or maybe just a guy who believes people can change." The final boarding call for their flight rang out. Keanu stood, stretching. "Shall we?" Sandra grabbed her bag, walking beside him toward the gate. I think we should do a movie together again." Keanu glanced at her, intrigued. "You got a script in mind?" She grinned. "Not yet, but something tells me we'd still make a great team." Keanu smirked. "I'd bet on that." And as they stepped onto the jet bridge, two Hollywood legends, still as effortlessly cool as ever, the universe seemed to agree. As they settled into their luxurious first-class seats, Sandra leaned back with a satisfied sigh. First a dramatic lounge showdown, and now an international flight with Keanu Reeves. Not a bad day, she mused. Keanu smirked as he buckled his seatbelt. "I do what I can." The flight attendants made their rounds, offering champagne and warm towels. Keanu declined with a polite nod, while Sandra happily accepted hers, pressing it against her face. "So," Keanu said after a moment, "you're serious about doing another movie together?" Sandra peeked at him over the towel. "Dead serious." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "Something action-packed or something different?" Sandra tilted her head. "What if we flip the script? No explosions, no buses on fire, just a good old-fashioned slow-burn romance." Keanu chuckled. "You and me in a romance movie." "Why not?" Sandra grinned. "We've got chemistry." Keanu tapped his chin. We could play two old friends who secretly loved each other for years but never said anything." Sandra's eyes lit up, and they reconnect after a long time apart. Maybe on a train in Europe. Lots of deep conversations, long glances. Keanu smirked. "Are we just describing Before Sunrise?" Sandra laughed. "Hey, good artists borrow, great artists steal." Keanu nodded. "Okay, but we need a twist. Maybe one of them has a secret." Sandra leaned in. "What kind of secret?" Keanu shrugged. "Maybe he's dying." Sandra groaned. "Keanu, no, too sad." "Fine, maybe he's secretly an assassin." Sandra rolled her eyes. "Why are you like this?" Keanu chuckled. Okay, no assassins, no tragic endings, just two people reconnecting." Sandra sighed, smiling. "I love it already." Just then the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready for departure. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy your flight." As the plane lifted into the sky, Sandra glanced at Keanu. If we actually make this movie, people will lose their minds." Keanu smirked. "Let's give them something worth waiting for." And just like that, the next great Sandra Bullock Keanu Reeves film was born. Not from a Hollywood pitch meeting, but from a chance encounter in a first-class lounge. Hollywood's next big movie, born at 35,000 feet. A few hours into the flight, Sandra and Keanu had their notebooks out, scribbling ideas on cocktail napkins and sketching out a rough plot on the back of the in-flight menu. Sandra tapped her pen against her chin. "Okay, so we've got two old friends who reconnect by chance." But what separated them in the first place? Keanu leaned back in his seat, thinking. Maybe they had a falling out, something unresolved. Maybe he left without saying goodbye. Sandra raised an eyebrow. Oof, that's harsh. Why did he leave? Keanu took a slow sip of his water. What if he had no choice? Maybe he had to take care of something, family, personal demon, something that made it impossible to stay. Sandra nodded, intrigued. And now years later they run into each other by pure chance. Maybe in Paris, or Venice, somewhere romantic. Keanu smirked. Let's say Venice. More canals, better lighting. Sandra laughed. You really think about lighting, huh? Keanu shrugged. Old habits. The flight attendant passed by and paused, watching them scribble furiously. You two look busy. Working on something exciting? Sandra grinned. Just planning our next movie. The flight attendant's eyes widened. Wait, seriously? Keanu nodded, deadpan. We're writing it right now, title pending. The flight attendant gasped. Oh my God, whatever it is, I'm watching it. Sandra winked. That's the plan. As the flight continued, the ideas kept flowing. By the time they landed in London, they had the foundation of something special. As they walked off the plane, Sandra nudged Keanu. You know, we should call our agents. This might actually be a thing. Keanu smirked. Or, we could just make it ourselves. Sandra stopped. You serious? Keanu shrugged. Why not? You produce, I produce. We can make something real, something personal. Sandra's smile grew. Keanu Reeves, are we about to make the most anticipated romance movie of all time? Keanu chuckled. Looks like it. And just like that, what started as a casual conversation in a first-class lounge had become something more. Hollywood's next great love story wasn't born in a studio. It was born at 35,000 feet, between two old friends who still had plenty of magic left to share. And when the movie finally hit theaters, the world went absolutely crazy. A movie the world didn't know it needed. By the time Sandra and Keanu arrived in London, word had already spread. A fan had overheard them brainstorming on the flight and posted about it online. Within hours, Twitter, or whatever social media platform people were obsessing over that week, was ablaze with speculation. Are Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock secretly making a romance movie? Speed 3? Or something even better? Shut up and take my money. Sandra's phone buzzed non-stop. Her agent, her manager, even her assistant's assistant, were all blowing up her inbox. Keanu, as usual, was unfazed. Guess we have to actually make this now, he said casually over breakfast at their hotel. Sandra smirked. Like we weren't already going to. The Hollywood frenzy. Within days, studios were calling. Everyone wanted in. Every major director, every award-winning screenwriter, even big-name streaming platforms were ready to throw absurd amounts of money at them. But Keanu, ever the Zen master, had other ideas. What if we don't go the traditional route, he suggested. What if we make this on our terms? Sandra narrowed her eyes. You're not thinking of doing this John Wick style, are you? Keanu smirked. Maybe. That's how they ended up at a quiet meeting in a small Venice cafe. This time, real Venice, not just their imaginary film setting. They hashed out details, bringing on a small but brilliant team. They co-wrote the script, handpicked the director, and decided to fund a chunk of it themselves. No studio interference, no forced endings, Sandra declared. Just a story about two people, and what happens when love gets a second chance, Keanu added. And just like that, the most anticipated romance film of the decade was officially happening. Filming begins, and the world watches. When the first behind-the-scenes photos leaked, Sandra and Keanu strolling through the foggy streets of Venice, exchanging wistful glances, the internet lost its collective mind. The film, now officially titled Somewhere in Time, became an obsession before a single frame had even been released. People analyzed every detail. Why is Keanu's character holding an old love letter? Is this a Before Sunrise tribute or something deeper? I swear to God, if this movie doesn't have a happy ending, I will riot. Keanu and Sandra meanwhile stayed quiet, letting the anticipation build. And then finally the first trailer dropped, the trailer that broke the internet. The screen faded in from black. A soft piano melody played. Keanu's voice, deep and full of nostalgia, spoke the first line, I never thought I'd see you again. Cut to Sandra, standing on a quiet Venetian bridge, eyes filled with something unspoken. Neither did I, she whispered. Montage. Sunsets over the canals, gloved hands brushing accidentally, long conversations over coffee, a lingering unsaid feeling between people who once had everything before it slipped away. Then, a gut punch of a moment. Why did you leave? Sandra's voice cracked just slightly. Keanu, staring at her, eyes full of regret. Because I thought I was doing the right thing. The screen cut to black, the title appeared, Somewhere in Time, and the world lost it. The movie's release, and the aftermath. When Somewhere in Time finally hit theaters, the response was insane. Critics called it a masterpiece of quiet, aching romance. Audiences sobbed openly in theaters. People called their exes, booked spontaneous trips to Venice, rewatched Speed just to relive the nostalgia. The Oscars, oh yeah, it swept them. Best Actress for Sandra, Best Actor for Keanu, Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay. And at the heart of it all were two friends who had taken a random airport lounge conversation and turned it into something timeless. At the after-party, as Sandra and Keanu sat on the rooftop of a fancy Hollywood venue, their golden statuettes resting beside their champagne glasses, Sandra grinned. Well, I'd say that worked out. Keanu chuckled. Yeah, not bad for an idea on the back of an in-flight menu. Sandra leaned back, staring at the stars. You think we should do it again? Keanu smirked. You got another story in mind? Sandra raised her glass. I think we can come up with something. And just like that, the greatest cinematic duo of all time wasn't done yet.